All right, so this is my gear closet here. All of this stuff and most of this stuff is like, that is kind of like the if I need it shelves of the gear that I have. And it takes up a lot of space. Actually, I'm looking at it now. I should probably sell some stuff. Mostly just lenses that I don't use, which is actually what I wanted to talk about today, is lens choice and why why do I only use 2 lenses? What's up? Nick Friend Films. Thanks for coming back. Thanks for hanging out. I always love it when you guys hang out with me. I don't know, it's just, I always end up going back to like the same set of lenses. Right now we're looking at the 24mm from Sigma. It's their 1.4. And then this job, this honking piece of glass, it's their 85-1.4. That's true, there's thousands of lenses to choose from. Honestly, if you include the vintage market and the used market, there might even be millions of lenses for you to use. With that many choices for glass lenses, how did I narrow it down to just 2? So for somebody that actually owns the gear that I use, I have to know a few things before buying, or have to know what I like to shoot and how I like to shoot those things. One way to decide the new gear that you get for the future is to actually look at the work that you've done in the past and the sort of lens choices and viewing angles that you've chosen for those specific projects, because that will dictate the things that you like the most, whether you realize it or not. So what did I do? I went and I looked back at my work, and it was always either pretty wide or pretty tight. I didn't have a lot of what would be called like medium shot. But one of the more interesting things that I did was I actually, and this is kind of like a weird thing to do, and it takes a little bit of time, a little bit of practice, a little bit of concentration. I tried to really diagnose what shots were missing from my work. And not to say that like I wanted those shots, just to acknowledge the fact that there were certain kinds of shots that I just didn't do. What that does is it eliminates certain lens choices and certain angles that you would otherwise have to accommodate for if you were just trying to get a full set of lenses. So I realized that like a lot of the focal lengths that I didn't use were between like the 30 and the 75mm mark. So that helped me realize that 1, I can get away with far fewer lenses than I thought. 2, I don't really like shooting on zooms anymore, which is kind of like the next part I wanted to mention. I'm gonna take off the 24. Oh, this 85. All right, I'm gonna have to back up for this guy. Okay, so first of all, loving the 85. This is such a fun lens. It's so cool. I have a good question for all of you zoom users, and it's honestly a really good question for all the prime users too, because this might help you justify the decisions that you made about your lens choice. Do you value sharpness, clarity, and speed over convenience, mobility, and flexibility? If that's true, then you're part of the prime gang, baby. Yeah! I won't apologize for being a prime user. Not talking about Bezos. All right, I made my point with this super tight lens that I love. So I made the jump from zooms to primes because of the fact that when I look back at my work, I noticed that I was pretty much only sitting into 2 different camps in terms of focal length. There was wides and tights. I didn't really use the middle ground. Now I still want to have like a good degree of flexibility, and I don't want to be wildly impractical with my lens choice. After all, I am a one-man band, like run and gun type filmmaker and content creator. So I wanted to get the most flexibility with the least amount of stuff, which I think is like the biggest battle for us all, really. Most people, when they buy prime lenses, are buying like kits of lenses, like the 24, 50, 85 sets of prime lenses is really, really common. Like photo and video and cinema and all that. This is a very, very common set of lenses. And the 50mm lens is probably the most common focal length of all time. The fact that it's such a popular lens is actually one of the reasons why I didn't want to get it. It's because it's so commonplace. This was a 50mm, that's a 50, 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 that is a 50 as well. The other reason that I only chose 2 lenses, my 24 and my 85, it's a little bit difficult to explain. But I think it's kind of weird. I think the best way to describe it is the 50 millimeter focal length for me at this point, it doesn't have enough intention behind the actual lens choice. I just think it's a bit too easy. So if we go tighter, if we go to, for instance, my 85 mil, this guy right here, it's very intentionally compressed and it has a very intentional portrait-y look. It's kind of weird to say, but it's almost like, it's just a more intentional focal length. Like it feels like it's more on purpose. It doesn't feel like you jumped into the scene and happened to get a good image. It kind of suggests that you made the image yourself. And that intentionality, I feel like, is one, it's not something that a lot of people talk about. And two, I think it provides like, you know when you eat food and you're like, it's good, I don't know why? That's kind of like what it's like to shoot with an 85 mil lens for me. It's like you understand that the decisions were made on purpose, but at the same time, it's difficult to specifically note like why it's so good. Like for me, like you eat like really cheesy pasta, it's delicious. It's always gonna be delicious, especially if it has bacon in it. That's kind of like the 50 mil lens. Something like this, 85, it's like sushi. I don't understand amazing sushi, but I do know the difference between like good and great sushi. I've had it, but I have no idea how they specifically do it. So that's like the certain indescribable something that comes with shooting with an 85 millimeter lens. Likewise, the exact same principle applies to this lens, to the 24 mil lens. It just shows a very intentional use of a wide angle, or at the very least, fools you into thinking that that's true. So that's why I chose the 24 and the 85. They show more intent to the work that I'm doing, and they also slot in perfectly to the work that I want to do. Thanks for hanging out. Catch you in the next one. Peace.